Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships with our Saturday upgrade and commander build video of the Kremlin. So today we're going to be looking at the armor scheme, discuss type of battleship Kremlin is, look at the upgrades, modules, and of course the commander. So, and starting off, I don't think I really need to spend much time on this, but what type of battleship is Kremlin? She's a mid-range to close-range battleship. Not in the sense that she per se is a brawler because of the lack of hydroacoustic search and easily eating torpedoes, but more that she's this battleship that can hold a flank down, a battleship that can push through and break through the enemy team just because of her superior armor and 457mm guns. So with Kremlin, it's kind of knowing how to position yourself well and when is best to do the things I've just discussed. So going into the armor layout, let's talk about the bow first. So you have 32mm up top. Otherwise, you have this icebreaker bow, 60mm, which goes into 150mm. So if you're like a cruiser, something like, let's say like Des Moines, you're going to want to be targeting the upper part of the bow with your HE versus the lower part. And then coming back to the stern, 32mm as well. But you have 300mm and a 150mm part of the armor belt there. Ship as a whole, you are very strong with a 60mm deck plating. That's superbly strong, and it makes you very resilient against HE spam, especially destroyers. They just don't have a chance unless they hit your superstructure. And then you 32mm on the deck and bow of the stern and bow plating. That's what I'm trying to say. And your superstructure is not that big. I mean, it's a little long, but I mean, in terms of overall size, I mean, it's pretty small. Like, when you're in a lot of these bow-on positions, like you don't have this very large superstructure sticking out. So it makes it really hard for enemy team to do meaningful damage to you bow-on. I've been bow-on with Yamatos, and they've not been able to do anything to me when they were firing at range. So keep that in mind. In terms of the upper armor belt, 150mm, that drops down to a 430 and a 410 in the middle, and then 430, 410 as well in the middle. Again, they're just separate plates for some reason. And we begin to strip away that plating, and we find your citadel. It is right here. So that's that exposed citadel armor scheme per se, but it's 430mm. So very strong, very hard to punch through. So that's something that definitely credits Kremlin well, but you still have to respect that if a player is aiming well enough, they can just bust right through your citadel armor and right into your ship. So typically when you play Kremlin, you're more this bow in, not so much stern away, but more primarily bow in. And then we're going to talk about the guns because there's going to be a special upgrade we're going to take. On the front is 550mm armor. The sides are 254, the top also 254, and then the back is actually pretty strong with 508. So not quite as strong as the front, but very strong. And then your barbette is 475mm. So these guns are really hard to knock out. Also because when we take this away, you can kind of see these, they're sloped too, which they're not a really boxy design. The only really boxiness of the turrets is just the back, since it's completely flat. So it's very, very hard to have these guns knocked out. I haven't had them knocked out yet. Let's go ahead and discuss the modules. So you have no more researchable upgrade modules to get once you've purchased the Kremlin. So with the build we have right now, we have a reload time of 29 seconds, 180-degree turn time of 28.7 seconds. Maximum HE shell damage 6,500, AP shell damage 14,500. So this AP guns smack really hard, especially if you catch someone out broadside. The hull, very tanky, 108,300. So I don't remember, well, now that you're the super battleships, they have more health than Kremlin does. But Kremlin has a ton of health. It has more than the Poison GK, which is at 105,000. It's got more than Montana. So you're just a very tanky battleship and very hard to put down. Your gunfire control system, you don't get any spotter planes, so max range is going to be 20.7 kilometers. Your propulsion is 30 knots, and of course with the ceramic flag, you can make that go a little bit faster, get up to 31 knots if you so desire. Now in terms of her modules, first we're going to check out what I have been mounted right now, which is the main Armaments Modification 1. This is typically what I run on battleships, but it's going to be exception for this Russian battleship line. What it does is it just basically reduces the chances of our main battery becoming incapacitated, improves the survivability, in, as well as reducing the main battery repair time. So I'm going to sell this. If you don't have a lot of coal, then I would just say go for that, reinforce it. You don't need these other two. But what we want is the Damage Control Party Modification 1. This increases the action time of the Damage Control Party and Fast Damage Control Team Consumables by plus 40%. So right now, with our build, we have an 11-second action time of our Fast Damage Control Team. So it's not a very long one. So actually what we want to do to improve that tankiness and survivability, we want to extend that, even if it's only going to be for X amount of seconds. Now normally there's a coupon you can use, which is coming back in 2 days, but I'm going to go ahead and buy it now. Full price is 17,000 coal, otherwise I think it's 12,000 something coal if you wait and use a coupon. But I'm not going to use one here. So we're going to mount this on, and then you're going to see that this goes from 11 seconds to 15.4 seconds because we added 40% action time to the Fast Damage Control Team. So this is nice. So especially when you're under a lot of HE fire, some of it's not going to pin you at all, but still has the chances of starting a fire. So just having this extend for that longer duration, it makes you more of this tanky threat, and again, just really hard to kill. In the second slot, we're going to take Damage Control System Modification 1. This is going to reduce our risk of catching fire, -5%, risk of flooding, -3%. You don't need engine room protection. For the third slot, you have Superb, even though we've taken the sixth slot, which does a -13% to our turret traverse. But with 28.7 seconds, so I don't mind not going for main battery modification 2. Rather, I'd like to get the aiming systems modification 1, as this reduces your main battery shell dispersion by -7%, which means your vertical and your horizontal maximum dispersion is shrunk. You're getting more tighter shell groupings. So that's the main reason of taking this. You did get a slight buff on your secondary battery firing range, +5%, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion, -5%. But that's not really the reason of taking this upgrade. It's for your dispersion and having more likely that your guns are going to land where you aim them. For the fourth slot, again, we want to build into this tankiness. Damage Control System Modification 2 reduces fire extinction time, -15%, flooding recovery time, -15%. So this is just really great to have overall here. And then going into the fifth slot, yeah, torpedo lookout system, we don't want that. Concealment system modification 1 would be great. It helps you, because otherwise you have a very large concealment, and we built max conceal on our commander, 13.4 kilometers. So detectability range, -10%, squadron detectability range by air, -10%, dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship, +5%. So it's a really way to go. To take the ship consumable modification 1, this just extends your consumable action time +10%. Doesn't really do anything. Where if those times you need to go dark, maybe you need to let your damage control team or your repair party come back off cooldown, the concealment works much better overall here. With the sixth slot, you had the main battery modification 3. Your main battery reload time is reduced by -12%. So that's what's giving us that 29 seconds. Reload time, otherwise you're over 30 seconds. Don't quite remember where exactly, but you are. Excuse me. But you have the nerf of the main battery traverse speed, -13%, but again, it's 28.7 second 180 degree turn time, which is fantastic for a tier 10 battleship. So we're not worried about that. You have auxiliary armaments modification 2. I don't recommend. This is just for your secondary and your AA, and they nerfed the AA of Kremlin, but still rating of 90, so you do okay against tier 8s, but tier 10s not so hot. Then you have the unique upgrade being the automated main battery loading mechanism. So this is for in the 6th slot. Your main battery reload time goes down by negative 18%, and your main battery firing range goes down by negative 12%. So you lose range, which I don't think is so optimal here. Overall, when you compare these two, what you're getting is an additional negative 6% reload time. Because remember, I have to give up this to get this. And then instead of having my 20.7 kilometers, I'm coming down further to 19 kilometers. And actually, you would be underneath 19 kilometers. Yeah, you'd be just underneath 19 kilometers, 18 point something. And in the tier 10 meta, that's not really good by any means, especially when you have people who are running, so on and so forth. So now ideally, like I said, this ship is more to be played in the mid-range. So let's say you're playing around your concealment, 13.4, could be anywhere that 10 to 15 kilometer window. So this isn't a sniper battleship where you're playing long range. So there's something to be had for this, but sometimes, an 18 kilometer range battleship at tier 10, it's like playing Massachusetts at tier 10 in the matchmaking. So it's decent, but I really recommend the main battery modification 3, and you don't lose any range. In terms of her armament, so 45% chance of causing a fire on our target, which is actually really good. Armor penetration capacity 76 millimeters, and maximum damage 6,500. Armor piercing, these are 457 millimeter guns, which means we can pin 30 millimeter, but we cannot pin 32 millimeter bows on ships, particularly the battleships. We need to cross over the 457, be slightly higher to do that. So it's something where the Yamato's steps in, or Shikishima. But you do a lot of damage, maximum damage 14,500 if you hit a sweet spot of a Citadel on an enemy ship. So really good stuff there. Your depth charge airstrike, you get 2 available flights. The range is 11 kilometers, so I'm thankful that it's at least 11 and not something like 8 or 5. So that's really good to see here on Kremlin. And the damage that these do is 4,900, and there's 2 bombs in 1 payload. Consumable wise, we talked about a little bit already, but you have the damage control team. 15.4 second action time, cooldown 38.8 seconds. We get 5 of them because we've built into the commander. So these are a limited number of charges, so you need to be wise in how you use them. And we'll talk a little more about this skill and how we can help it out. And then you'd only typically have 3 heals, but with our commander build, we have an additional one, so we have 4 repair parties. So right now, plus 541 HP per second, action time of 30.8 seconds, consumable cooldown time 77.6 seconds, which you can also lower. Now, if we take the India Delta combat signal, which improves how much health you're able to restore, it's actually really nice, because now we're up to 649 versus, what was that, the 541. So you do want to be running India Delta combat signal on your battleship, because that does make quite the difference. Another thing we can run is the November Foxtrot. Ship consumable preparation reload time, negative 5%. So notice the cooldown time of these two, 38.8, 77.6, it's going to drop. 73.7, 36.9 seconds. So I really recommend running this, particularly for the fast damage control team. If you find yourself in a really heated situation, get that damage control team back off cooldown that much faster. And then, of course, not having the full 80-second cooldown time on your repair party, a minute 20, bringing it down to 73.7 seconds. Otherwise, you don't want to detonate here. You want to run the Jet Charlie combat signal. You want to reduce the fire extinguishing time as well as the flooding time. You want to run the Hotel Yankee, damage caused by ramming an enemy, plus 50%, damage received when ramming an enemy, negative 20%. So this is typically just what I run here. I don't really add anything else on. So I just run these 6 combat signals. Now, in terms of the commander, we have Nikolay Kuznetsov. You can purchase him in the armory for 175,000 coal. So he's a unique commander with some skills that typically, if you if you're going to go really low health, you're always going to get an activation of one of his talents, which is the Will for Victory. So this activates once per battle if your ship's HP falls below 10%. So for us, that means once we fall beneath 10,800 health, this talent will activate. So what happens is it extinguishes fires, moves instances of flooding, and repairs damaged modules, like you had a gun knocked out or something, and prevents enemy submarine launched torpedoes from homing. This has an action time of 15 seconds. Now this used to be 30 seconds. And Wargaming nerfed it not too long ago, which honestly it was a little bit of an OP skill, so it made sense. But I think they made a tiny increase on the ship HP per second, so it's plus 0.35%. And dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship plus 20%. So this effect only happens for 15 seconds, and then it ends. So then the dispersion resumes to normal, so on and so forth. So this is really good, and often always utilizing this skill quite a lot in the Kremlin. The other is if you pick up the First Blood, you'll get an additional consumable. So you'll get an additional heal and additional fast damage control team. So 4 heals to 5 heals, 5 damage control teams to 6 damage control teams, as an example if you still had all your consumables available. So really nice to have here with Nikolay Kuznetsov. And then for Battleship, his enhanced skill is just here. It's the Consumable Specialist, which is a reduction in the cooldown time. So we're not actually getting any use out of that here. Now, looking over the skills, let's go ahead and talk about that. So for 1 point skill, I recommend taking the Emergency Repair Specialist. This is what's already showing with the cooldown time of our fast damage control team and our repair party, where it reduces your the cooldown time by -3%, repair party consumable cooldown time -3%. So this is really nice. For a 3-point commander, I recommend taking Grease the Gears, so our main body traverse speed is plus 20%. Then for a 6-point build, I'd recommend taking Adrenaline Rush. It's going to reduce your reload time even further. Right now it's 29 seconds, so then we can get it down to 28.5, 28. 27.5, 27 even, as we lose health, so it's good to have. And what I would recommend for your first 10-point skill is picking up Fire Prevention. So this reduces the risk of catching fire by -10%, and the maximum number of fires on a ship is reduced to 3. So right now, if you didn't have Fire Prevention, you would have 4 fires could be set on your ship. 1 on the bow, 1 on the stern, and then 1 on the rear power superstructure, 1 on the forward power superstructure. What Fire Prevention does is instead of having 2 fires on your superstructure here, you're only going to have 1. And a lot of HE spamming people are going to be targeting a superstructure, so you're going to want to run Fire Prevention sooner than later. So if you only start with the 10-point commander, take Fire Prevention first is what I would recommend. Now, after you have a 10-point build, next I'd discuss a 14-point build, and that would be, I'd recommend taking the Emergency Repair Expert. Damage Control Party Consumable Action Time, plus 10%, so we're getting a longer duration. So that was, instead of it being 10 seconds stock, it was 11 seconds before we put the special upgrade in slot 1 on, which put us to 15.4 seconds. So that's what you were seeing there. Number of Damage Control Party Consumables, plus 1, so we go from 4 to 5. Repair Party Consumable Action Time, we went from 28 seconds to 30.8, which is good. Now, we have number of Repair Party Consumable Charges, you go from 3 to 4. So you definitely want that on the Kremlin. And then after you have the 14-point build, there's 2 ways you could go. You could go ahead and wait till you're an 18-point commander and pick up the Concealment System Expert. Ship's detectability range, -10%. So we have a pretty decent concealment of 13.4, and then by air, 11.3. So that's nice to have. Or with the 17-point commander, you can go and pick up basic survivability. So this is reducing your module restoration time, -15%, fire extinction time, -15%, flooding recovery time, -15%. So you can do 17 point and then a 21 point, or you could do a 18 point and then the 21 point commander. So it's just really up to you. The beauty about the Kremlin is that she's just overall a very tanky battleship, and that's kind of the role and function she serves as. And her turrets are so hard to knock out, so you don't even need to worry about preventive maintenance. And you're not really worried about swapping your shells, so there's no need for the gun feeder. So this is a pretty straightforward standard battleship build that I would recommend on Kremlin, and that I have found success with so far in my playing with her. I don't really recommend any of the other modules. I think even your skills, your secondary battery, we have at 7.7 right now. You know, so it'd be a bit harder to get use out of the close quarters combat skill, because this only activates when someone comes within your secondary battery, and it's a can be activated skill, where these you are getting the use out of them immediately, outside of the adrenaline rush until you begin losing some health. So overall, this is just a very comfortable build to run on Kremlin. So I do recommend for you to run this build. If you have questions about something I didn't cover, let me know in the comments, and I can respond to you, or other people can respond to you. And so that's going to bring our video to a close. If you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you are subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.